Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Looking forward to seeing you all. And there's a lot going on around the world, both with our various projects and in places like Hong Kong, Spain, Norway, etc. So I don't know if you've been on the blog, but you might be interested to know that Greg Johnson of Countercurrents was arrested in Norway today prior to his appearance at a conference. Now, this is really remarkable because he wasn't arrested for doing anything. He wasn't arrested for saying anything. He was arrested because the Norwegian authorities believe that he was a threat because of something that he might say. And what we're seeing here is the literal imposition of thought crime. We can't even call it speech policing. We can't even call it hate speech because nothing's happened. It's Minority Report pre-crime type of nonsense. Let me read this to you. This is the report from CNN. So we're going to actually pick something that's not going to be biased towards Mr. Johnson. Norwegian authorities have arrested a high-profile American white supremacist hours before he was due to give a speech at a far-right conference in Oslo on Saturday. Oh, this was yesterday, sorry. The detained American, Greg Johnson, is editor-in-chief of the white nationalist Countercurrents publishing group. He had been scheduled to speak at the Skansa Forum, a network known for its anti-Semitic and racist views. Norway's intelligence service considered Johnson to be a threat, not because of what he could do, but because of his hate speech and his previously expressed support for Anders Breivik, spokesman Martin Bernsen told CNN. Well, if you're in Gamergate or you've ever been on Twitter with a Breivik-related meme, I guess you better not go to Norway. Not that I was planning to, but it's really astonishing to see the bizarre themes or bizarre lengths that they are going to. And the thing is, it's really gotten astonishingly bad there because despite the fact that they have these fairly strong supposed freedoms of speech and expression. In fact, Freedom House actually has Norway rated as one of the most free countries in the world where it comes to speech, freedom of the press, and expression. The reality is, and I am not exaggerating, you are far more free in China than you are in Norway. I am not exaggerating. Based on what happened to Greg Johnson, there is a very good chance that I would be subject to the same treatment. There is no way that a Norwegian television station or network would have me on to allow me to speak and freely express my nationalist views. Now, I'm not like Greg in that I'm not a white nationalist. I'm an American Indian. If you want to, if you must label me as anything other than a Christian nationalist, then you can call me a red reservationist. I absolutely 100% stand by all of the goals of the American Indian movement. All of them. And so, no, Beta Cuck, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. I have appeared on Chinese state television several times. They have repeatedly asked me to come back. The main reason that I haven't is that I haven't had the time. You are unequivocally more free to express yourself and speak your opinion in China than you are in Norway, in Sweden, in what's it called? Anti-BDL laws. It is possible to say it is possible that it may be worse. We're not sure yet. And so Martin K says he's Norwegian. He says Norway has been subverted since my childhood, but I got a lot of base friends. Like everywhere things are happening, bad and good, I'm not in despair. Well, absolutely. Absolutely. But the point is that if you believe in any sort of free speech, now I don't, okay? I don't have any problem with nations setting different rules, defending themselves, etc., etc. But I think that you need to start paying attention to the actual situation rather than being caught up in the rhetoric and propaganda. And so when you look at the actual situation, when you look at the fact that we are actually treated better by countries like Russia and countries like China, where the governments know the problems of excessive repression and so forth, you got to keep in mind these governments, Putin, Xi, etc., the leaders, they often are those who suffered under the oppressive governments that we tend to equate them with. Xi much more than Putin, obviously. So what you're seeing here is an inversion. Glor says, Christianity is only allowed to be practiced openly in China if it serves the state. That's true. That's absolutely true. Now, go read the Bible publicly in the United States, in the UK, and if you read certain verses, you will be stopped one way or another. So don't pretend that there is freedom in the West the way that there used to be, the way that you believe there is now. It doesn't exist anymore. This is a good question. Fuber says, I'm under no illusion that America has free speech, but how do you quantify who is more free? You can't say XYZ in the USA, but you can't, not just, the networks. I'm allowed to go on the state-controlled network. And I told them that Trump wasn't bluffing, that he was going to start a trade war, and that the United States was going to be better off for it. This is not the official Chinese position. You understand that, correctly? I mean, you get that, right? But it was fine not only was it fine for me to go on and say it, because I was correct about it, they asked me to come back on and talk about it again. Do you think that the Norwegian government is going to permit me to go on their state-controlled television and tell them, because of what you're doing, there will absolutely be more incidents like the Breivik, like the Breivik murders. There absolutely will be. Why? Because no human society in history has ever peacefully endured the kind of invasion that we've seen in Norway, in Sweden, in England, in the United States. Nowhere. Nowhere, never, no how. CTC Art says, true, I was standing in a public park in an off-limits spot. A cop was watching and was fine with it until I started reading the Bible out loud and then was stopped by the cop. Not even surprised. You go. Now, I am not saying that China is entirely free. It's not. I'm not saying that Russia is. My point is that those of you who believe people talking about, we believe in freedom of expression, we believe in freedom of speech, they're lying. Freedom of speech is a lie. Freedom of the press is a lie. Freedom of expression is a lie. I've said many times, I don't support free speech. You can watch my videos. I've talked about it specifically. And no, freedom of speech didn't only get used as a weapon against freedom. Freedom is not a virtue. How do you balance the concept of freedom as you see it held up as a virtue in keeping with democracy and diversity and equality? How do you equate that with the similar definition of freedom as having nothing left to lose? You can't. They're two fundamentally different things. And so the only genuine freedom is truth. The only genuine freedom is to be found in Jesus Christ. But the kind of freedom that they're talking about isn't just a lie. It's also bait. It's rhetorical bait. Kyle Lewis says, is democracy still viable after all that's happened? Democracy is not and has never been viable. Would you equate freedom to liberty? They're related, but they're not exactly the same thing. Why does it say, think about the kind of freedom that is meant by the phrase, the truth will set you free. The truth, if the truth sets you free, what does that have to do with freedom of speech, freedom of expression, etc., etc.? It's got nothing. It's got absolutely nothing to do with it. They're just both using the same sounds. Travis Wilson said, I thought you were a supporter of direct democracy. I find it very, very difficult to deal with normal people for just this reason. Okay? I understand that everyone isn't stupid. But to me, it just seems painfully stupid to not understand the difference between the ideal and the practical. How am I even supposed to talk to you about anything if you're going to constantly take things out of context just because one word is the same. Okay? What I have said, and the reason, no, it's his question, I'm not, he's not banned at all. It's not a good question, but it is a typical question. And so it's good that we are addressing this. When we're talking about the situation as things are today, or as, you know, the real world options, I would choose direct democracy over the strictly limited democracy, the fake democracy that we have across the West now. If there was direct democracy, then you would not have the levels of immigrant invasion. You would not have the levels of crime, the rape, etc., etc. So that's better. But is it ideal? Probably not. Because direct democracy is easily overwhelmed. You know, Try and Speak gets it. At least with direct democracy, you can admit that it's a demographic game. Exactly. The feral cat says, if we had direct democracy, Hillary would be president. Probably not. If we I mean, again, you have to look at the whole situation. If we had direct democracy, we wouldn't have all the foreign voters that would put her into office. And again, it doesn't matter. The United States doesn't have it. In fact, if there was direct democracy, there probably wouldn't be a presidency of the sort that it is. Nathan D says, direct democracy always and by definition violates the rights of the individual. So what? Who cares? So does literally every other form of government. You know, just take your libertarianism and, I mean, forget libertarianism, okay? Just absolutely forget it. It is as hopelessly irrelevant and hopelessly idealistic as communism. And it won't work any better. Direct democracy we can talk about because there are actually places in the world where direct democracy functions. You have the state referendums in the United States. You have a limited form of direct democracy in places like Switzerland. So, I mean, yeah, libertarian is for college kids. I get the appeal. I was long considered one of the leading libertarians on the internet. I was always small L rather than capital L, but, you know, same thing. You know, then propertarianism is stupid. I don't take it seriously in any way, shape, or form. Isn't direct democracy a slippery slope to communism? No, not at all. I was a libertarian before the Kochs bought it. That's funny. Anyhow, to get back to the point, we need to get over this obsession with individualism and with freedom, because they're traps. They're rhetorical traps meant to ideologically imprison you. Anything that, what it all comes down to is not freedom. Satan wanted freedom. The whole Luciferian thing is all about freedom. Freedom from constraints. Freedom from sin. Freedom from oppression. Well, what's oppression? Being married. And monarchy is not God's ideal. We know that from the example of Israel. Apparently the ideal is the system they had with the judges. So if you want to try to figure out what the biblical ideal is, that would be the biblical ideal. But again, Christianity is in the world, not of it. So yeah, exactly. Ty already got to my point before I did. Jordan Peterson wants us all to be radical individualists who don't form communities. Exactly. Why? Because that isolates you. It atomizes you. Think about how effective the Dread Ilk and the Bears have been together. Two groups of people, the maximum number being about 300,000. That's the absolute maximum number. That's the number of Owen's subscribers plus mine. And what we're able to do is vastly multiplied beyond anything that I can do alone, anything that Owen can do alone. And that is enough to illustrate the fundamental flaw of the obsession with individualism. And so, we are much stronger together than we are alone. That's actually part of our strategy. We have our community alone, just our community, has the ability to bring practically any company to its knees. I realize that sounds grandiose. I assure you it's not. Brandon Macy, I am Spartacus. Got it. So there are no secure systems? Not one? No, there are no secure systems. This is about, it's like legal contracts. You can put together whatever language you want in a legal contract. And you know what? It won't do you a damn bit of good if the person on the other side who signed it is not trustworthy. I've seen that over and over again. Frank Underwood says, it's like the Knickers questioning Charlie Kirk. It would not work if there was one guy asking pointed questions. The individual is easily, what did he say here? I missed it. Is easily dismissed. That's absolutely right. The contract is only as good as the individual on the other end, as the person behind it. Was the governing body in Judges similar to Sparta? Not even a little bit. Real Ghostface says, try denying the Holocaust publicly and loudly in any major city in the West, and you'll see how free your speech is. Exactly. Look, that's the thing. There's no magic system. There's no magic ism. Everything ultimately comes down to, does it support or oppose the beautiful, the good, and the true? That's how you have to judge everything. And if you want a shorter version of that, is it genuinely pro-Christian and in service to Jesus Christ? Or is it neutral? Or is it opposed? Right? That's what it comes down to. So Youngblood says, I wrote and worked on contracts for over 20 years. There's no such thing as an airtight contract. Absolutely. Travis Wilson, what do you think of similar things like the principle of non-aggression? I think it's retarded. I think it's absolutely hopeless, and even Stefan Molyneux will admit it if pressed. I just had an assistant district attorney tell me a contract is just a piece of paper. Exactly. That's what they believe. And so, the law doesn't exist. The law is a delusion that we all agree to pretend is real. I'm talking about human law. The written law is changed at will by the judges who establish case law precedent to modify it. I have literally seen things like a number redefined to mean a number that was very, very different. They are social constructs that are dynamically defined. I mean, the law is basically a dynamically defined and redefined social construct. That's it. And so when you talk about, freedom and that sort of stuff, it's almost irrelevant. And here's the thing. We can live in fear. We can say, oh no, look what happened to Greg Johnson. He's a soft-spoken homosexual. I'm not going to discuss propertarianism at all. I am wildly underimpressed with Curtis Doolittle, and I read a little bit of his stuff years ago, was totally unimpressed, and paid no attention since then. So I can pretty much assure you that I'm not going to address that in any detail. If you guys want to discuss that on your own at some point, that's fine. It's of no interest to me. I'm not interested in isms. Don't you understand that yet? There is no magic ism. Nothing is ever going to fix man. Get that through your head. Nothing's going to fix man, and nothing's going to heal the world. Anyone who tells you that they can fix humanity or that they can heal the world, they are lying, and they are almost certainly evil. So, just give it up. Stop looking for it. Stop trying to write that perfect contract that's going to control everybody and keep everybody from doing bad things. Exactly. This is a fallen world. We have to live in it, but we're not of it. So don't lose any sleep about your inability to do so, and don't trust anyone who says that it is that they can provide it. Yeah, utopia literally means nowhere. That's precisely. That's precisely it. Let me do a couple super chats here. Okay. Aurelius Zola sends 50 Canadian. Thank you. That's very generous. Samson Bear says, can't find Owen and Dr. Jones' interview on Unauthorized. Are you a subscriber? It's for subscribers only, and it's on one of Owen's. It should be on Owen's channel. I mean, it's definitely up there. In fact, if you just search my blog, I even have a link directly to it. Zach the Stoner says, if you're confused about anything in life, find a good church, go regularly, and pray. all the answers are there as succinct as possible. Vox, how do you recognize a good church? What are the signs? Well, the churches are people. The way that you recognize a good church is that you see and find good people there. We can tell you red flags to avoid, if they're flying a rainbow flag, if they're preaching about the usual left-wing social justice politics, if they have women in the pulpit, if they approve of any particular sin and make a big show of accepting it. All those are red flags. But at the end of the day, a good church is a church that's full of good people who speak the truth. And you may have to try a number of different places. I went to 22 different dojos before the 23rd one was the one that we decided to join. And it was the best in that area. And you may need to go to a number of different churches because there's a lot of churches that have fallen away from the truth. There's a lot of churches that have fallen away from the worship of Jesus Christ and fallen away from the Bible. Cave Bear says, "Welcome back, Vitkun Quisling. Make Norway a Reich puppet again." Well, that's exactly what they're doing. These are, they're not capital F fascists, but they're certainly lowercase f fascists. Matthew Lopez said, "Vox, in your most realistic opinion, what will actually kick off the change of powers that are subverting and controlling the population, voting or physical force?" Oh, it's almost certainly going to be physical force. It'll be voting in some, it depends on where. It'll be a little different everywhere. Think about World War II. Who would have ever imagined that the one major country to not get involved in World War II would be Spain? Before the war, if you had bet who was going to be in the war, Spain or Italy, you would have expected Spain. And you would have assumed that Italy was actually on the side of the Allies, which it was in World War I, and which it nearly was until Britain broke a naval pact with it. So, don't try to pay attention, but don't try to guess these things, because you're not going to be able to. If you've read enough history, then you understand how unanticipated a lot of things are. The general theme, yeah, we know what's going to happen. Before World War I, everyone knew war was coming. Now, everybody knows that war is coming. But we don't know, is it going to be in Kashmir? Is it going to be in Luxembourg or Norway? Sweden certainly looks like a candidate. The United States, who knows? Drywall Bear sends $10. Thank you. Cave Bear says, "Thank you for being a Christian, publicly living life in the light of eternity. The view of this present darkness changes when one's eyes are opened." Well, you have to do what you believe to be right. You have to speak the truth as you perceive and understand it. I don't like seeing these things that happen. What the Norwegians are saying about Greg Johnson are just flat out lies. The guy has absolutely no interest whatsoever in violence and military things and that sort of stuff. And so you look at that and you realize, well, there but for the grace of God go I and about 50% of the people that I know. We've all committed thought crime and hate crime and all these sort of things. That's the whole point of why they're trying to instill fear in you. Oh no, I said something about Saint Breivik once. They want you thinking like that. No, absolutely not. If it's true, it's true. You know, people say, "Oh, well, how can you possibly say something like, you know, if Norway survives in 100 years, there will be a statue of Breivik?" I say, look at Switzerland. William Tell was an assassin, according to the stories. You know? Not only that, he actually, you know, murdered people from ambush. George Washington led his troops to murder foreigners in their sleep on Christmas Eve. You don't hear that being condemned too often, do you? I mean, he violated so many of the rules of war at that time. You know, he would have been condemned as you know, the Al Qaeda or the Saddam, or no, the Osama bin Laden of his day. But he's the father of his country. So, you know, posturing and claiming that we know how people of the future are going to regard things. Well, the one thing that we know is that they're almost certainly not going to see them the way that we see them. Is my prediction more accurate than, you know, some outraged left-wing Norwegian socialist who's virtue signaling? You know, we'll find out in 100 years. Karen took the kids. Is it anti-Christian to hope for war? I don't think so. The degeneracy of society makes me actively hope for war at this point, and I look forward to the potential of witnessing every knee bow, including my own. No, I think that the degeneracy is such that there's a reason why people find themselves just unable to take it anymore and wishing for the horror and devastation of war. You know, now, of course, once people get caught up in it, then they dream of peace. I mean, this is part of the inherent contradiction of man. When man is at peace too long, he needs to go to war. When man is caught up in war, he longs for peace. Now, I want peace. But due to the degeneracy, the depravity, and frankly, just the sheer stupidity of the evil leadership of the nations of the West, I don't think that's what we're going to get. And neither, I might point out, do any of the military historians of whom with whom I'm familiar. They're all anticipating exactly the same thing that I am, as are, you know, a lot of the more experienced military officers. Rational Rise TV. I'm generally interested to hear more about what brought you to the conclusion that propertarianism is stupid. That's nice. I'm not. As a general rule, if I'm not interested in something, it's not much point in asking me about it, you know? Castelia audiobook format on Android. We want to do that, but we haven't had anyone to work on it, so we've made absolutely no progress on that whatsoever, unfortunately. SI said, good to watch you in real time, Vox, always with you. Thanks. I think that's from Denmark, so good luck up there, guys. Stay strong. Rotogan says, supporting what I enjoy listening to. Thank you, Rotogan. Kyle Anderson says, happy to catch you live again. That's cool. Bear Zerker sends $2. Thank you. Ben Cohen says, what was the cause of the Industrial Revolution? The right inventions caused by the right societal mindset. Any books on the subject that you recommend? Not off the top of my head, But I think that you need to look at the strictness of pre-Victorian and pre-Victorian England. They basically practiced a active eugenics policy, a practical, effective eugenics policy, where they essentially got rid of all of the people predisposed to committing crimes. We were watching a documentary on the Fire of London, the Great Fire of London, and they commented how the penalty for stealing was hanging. And it wasn't a theoretical one. And so you do that for a couple hundred years, and suddenly you have a intelligent, it was a combination of the Christian population, the intelligence of the population, and the right inventions being put together first. Brandon O'Neill says, "Cheers, Vox! Another football Sunday. Already halfway through the season. It goes by so fast." Yeah, I'm a little unhappy today with the Vikings. They absolutely had that game, and then I was actually thinking about doing this as the whole stream, talking about the importance of being yourself, the importance of knowing yourself and sticking to what you do. If they had just stuck to what they did and given the ball to the NFL's leading rusher against the 30th place defense 6 straight times, they would have won. I have no doubt about that at all. But instead, they tried to get cute and fool people. Sometimes you just got to run the ball down their throat. Cave Bear said, "Hijutsu des. Truth is truth. Hontoni." And Thor's daughter Bear sends 21 Canadian. Thank you. That was very kind. And we're caught up. Let's see here. What should the punishment for porn making be? Well, if you want, it all depends on how quickly you want to improve society, but I'm pretty sure that in pre-Victorian England, you would have been hanged. That was pretty much their penalty for just about everyone, just about everything. Did the American colonists become a different nation than their English cousins by the time of the Revolutionary War? Well, they certainly perceived themselves as one, so I think we'd have to say yes. How does that work? Well, separation by an ocean for several hundred years. Remember, people tend to forget how long those colonies had been in place. It seems like the globalist process is very painful and nasty, and natural the response to fight against it. Well, once people figure it out, sure. Globalism is bad for most people. It's horrible for most people. There's a discussion on the blog about how something like 1/3 the population of Estonia has been forced to leave because of the way they joined the European Union. Maybe it was Latvia, wherever Riga is. They said basically Riga has an economy and everything else is just ruined. Now, I don't know how true that is. There might be a little exaggeration there, but that's what's up. Kansas Bear says, "I was addicted to porn. I hate it now. I see the lie. It's destroyed me from forming a family, and I hate myself for falling for the lie." Don't. And it won't keep you from forming a family. That's the beauty of Christianity. Confess, repent, and accept forgiveness. Are penalties like hanging because of the religious connection or because of the behavioral influence consequences? Yes, because of the consequences. Hanging was considered to be shameful. It was really devastating to various petty nobles during the Wars of the Roses and stuff. I mean, they would literally at times beg to be beheaded rather than hanged. How many other countries are going to follow the UK out of the EU? Oh, I think probably Italy will do so. Will be one of the next ones. I expect Poland to eventually. Hungary. Wasn't Adam Smith moral sentiments needed to be coupled with wealth of nations for a more moral market? Perhaps. All but Belgium eventually. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, Italy's going to change dramatically once the next election happens. The whole that whole deal that got Salvini out of power was to avoid an election. There's a reason why they're trying to avoid elections, because the nationalists are rising everywhere. How would you prefer to be executed? I would prefer not. Will the UK actually ever leave? Of course, because the EU is going to collapse sooner or later. Does the US really have till 2033? That seems a bit late to me. That's kind of funny. More and more people are telling me, I don't think we have till 2033. Whereas just 5 years ago, people are telling me, 2033, there's no way. So I find that interesting. So anyhow, well, that's all I've got time for tonight, because a lot of you have been asking, how come your video dark streams are not up on unauthorized? It's like, well, because I have to get all the pictures together. They're already all uploaded. I just need to do like 5 more covers and then turn them all on. So this will be up there tomorrow. The rest of them up through 517 should be up there tonight. I've got good news about Owen's special. It will be up there very soon, probably by the end of next week, but almost certainly by the week after that. It's looking really good. Thanks to all of you who've been backing the Junior Classics campaign. That's doing exceptionally well. And in fact, it's already blown through the average crowdfunding model predictions for the middle period. So that's kind of fun. I'll break it down for you guys sometime if you like, but it's I always like to sort of predict how things are going to work out and then see whether I'm right or not. And then finally, things are proceeding very actively on the replatforming front on all sides. If you haven't backed that effort yet, you might like to consider it in light of we're now transforming it into the subscription service that people have been asking us for years. So we're working on that. Basically, in addition to supporting the replatforming effort, you'll also get the audiobook or the ebook, or the ebook and the audiobook, or the ebook, the audiobook, and the paperback of the month. So that's that's pretty crazy. Anyhow, that's all going on. Thank you for tuning in. Shout out to Greg Johnson Good luck in Norway, and let's hope that the president opposes the detainment and arrest of an American citizen by Norway as aggressively as he did when Sweden detained and arrested an American citizen. So, have a good evening. I'm Voxday. This is the Darkstream.